G'day everyone, Joe here again. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a quick dungeon room battle map for your games. And this tutorial is actually prompted by one of our Storyweaver fans who's asked me how does he build a room that he can display on a 55-inch television set with his gaming group and switch on and off different pieces of the room as they discover the traps. And I thought, what a great example of how to really push the envelope with mapping in your games. So we're going to create a dungeon room, in this case a very simple little temple crypt thing, and we're going to put various traps in it as we go. But I'm also going to use this as a refresher course for many of you. I know that there's a lot of people who have watched my very early Dungeon Designer tutorials, which I think I made almost 5 years ago now, and I thought this would be a good way to quickly refresh all of your knowledge and maybe even to teach you a few new things. So if you really want detailed, very in-depth tutorials, go all the way back on my YouTube channel, or you can go to the Storyweaver website, www.storyweaver.com. Anyway, let's get straight to it. So to do this, we first of all need to think about how we're going to be presenting this. And I've decided that I would like this dungeon map to be able to fit neatly onto a computer screen. So in that case, it's going to be a landscape mode view. But also I'd like to be able to print it out on a single letter size or A4 size piece of paper, which constrains us in terms of how big this room can be. Now, letter size paper and A4 size paper can just both squeeze on an 11-inch by 8-inch map. And in real world terms, in other words in mapping terms, that means a 55-foot by 40-foot room. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a map which is 55-foot by 40-foot. So let's get started with the mapping. To start with any map, you always click on New Map. I'm not going to save my wonderful tile sheets here. I'm going to click on No. I'm going to select Dungeons, and I'm going to say Decide Settings Myself. I could use a predefined template, but I want to have my map just at that 55 by 40 foot dimensions. So I'm going to click Next. I'm going to use a standard Dungeon Designer 3 dungeon. Now, as you can see, I've got a lot of additional mapping tools loaded in here, but this one is the one which many of you will have. So I'm just going to stick with the basics for the moment. Click on Next. Dimensions. Now, remember, I want this to be displayed on a computer screen, so I'm going to start with a landscape size orientation, which means my width would be 55 feet and my height will be 40 feet, 11 inches by 8 inches when printed. Next, I'm going to turn off my map background. I don't want that displayed. If I do want it, I can put it back in later, but for the moment I prefer just a white background. Now, I could set the grid overlay. I'm not going to in this particular case because I'm going to do that manually later. Select Next. Do you want multiple levels? Not at all. Finish. And then I'm just going to give it a name. I'm going to overwrite this Temple Room 01 here. So click on Save. Yep, overwrite it. So there, we've got our basic map. And as you can see, if we click on the grid and we select it to 5-foot grid, 2 snaps, you can now see that my grid spaces are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 inches long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 inches down. And you can also see that that's going to fit quite well on a TV screen. So, the first thing you do when mapping a dungeon is you map out your floors. And since this is just going to be one room, it's going to be relatively easy. The fastest way of drawing a floor is, I believe, to use this tool here, the floor tool. And if you right-click on it, you'll see DD3 comes packed with a whole bunch of nice little floors. Since this is going to be a temple, I'd like to use something rather extravagant. So I'm going to use this green tile mosaic here. So clicking on the green tiles here will allow me to start drawing my room. And I could draw, a fairly interesting looking room, making it a bit of a curve. And then of course out to the hallway. Now that's great if I wanted a room that was just all straight walls and straight lines. But I'm going to show you a more advanced technique. I actually want to have this room, instead of being this straight line across here, I want it to have a lovely curved alcove where I'm going to place a statue. So clearly this style of drawing is not going to be sufficient for this type of room. Bear in mind, it's actually very useful for most rooms, but when you want to draw that something special, How do you do that? Well, in this case, I'm going to click on the Erase tool. I'm going to click on my floor, and I'm going to right-click and do it. So I'm going to start afresh. And to do this, I'm going to manually draw the room. I'm going to start by changing my sheet to floors. When you use the Auto Floor tool here, it will automatically set your sheet and your layers. If you're going to do it manually, you need to change everything manually. I'm also going to change my fill style manually, and I'm going to make it solid for the moment. Click on OK. And I'm going to change my color to bright red. Now, the reason I'm changing it to bright red is that I can see the outlines of the floor that I'm going to be drawing. And I'm also going to change my line width to 0.2. So it's nice and easy to recognize. Let's start by using the Path tool to draw the straight bits of my room. The straight bits will consist of the doorway entrance here. So there you go. There you can see that's part of my floor bracket there. Then what I would like is I'm going to use this Arc tool. Now the Arc tool is a fantastic tool. I'm going to go Start and End, and then I'm going to draw this out so I've got a little bit of a curve. Start there, end there, and then draw it outwards so I've got a little bit of a flanged curve there. So we've already started to get some interesting shape to it. Click on the Path tool, select that edge, come out, come up halfway there, land it there, come halfway in, and then bring myself down to this point here. Now, that's a very interesting piece of floor that I've just drawn, and I'd like to be able to make sure that it is exactly the same on the other side. So here's a shortcut. Right click on the Copy tool, and you can see that there's all these other ways of copying things. And I'm going to do mirrored copy. I'm going to select the pieces of line that I like, those ones. I'm going to right click and go do it, and then I just have to draw along the center line here. Bingo! We've now got the other side of our room. Now let's draw the big area in here, which is going to be the domed area. I'm going to click on the left click on the Arc tool, Start and End, and I'm just going to bring this out to halfway. So we've now got a very interesting shaped room, and that's perfect for our temple. To bring all of this together, I'm now going to change the fill style to a bitmap fill. And I'm going to manually choose the bitmap from this huge list which they give you. And I think we have the green mosaic tile, so I'm going to select that one. I'm going to click on OK. You can see it's now been set here. I'm going to change my width to 0. Click on OK. Now, the multi-poly tool here, this is a fantastic tool, multi-poly. What it will do is if you select all of these lines, all of the lines there, you can see all 6 lines are being selected. Make sure everything's selected. When you select those and then you go do it, it will convert them all into one big shape. So now you can see you've got this fantastic floor. So let's now put the wall on. There's a couple of ways that you can put the wall on. Normally you would just use this tool here, default wall, and you would choose the wall that you want, let's say a cobblestone wall, and then you could just draw a wall. That looks great. But we've got all these weird curves and things going on. How do you get the wall in with that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little trick. I'm going to undo, so I'm going to go to the undo function here, undo. So, and then I'm going to re-explode this shape. So I'm going to type in explode. I'm going to select this shape and do it. Now you see it turns it back into those lines. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these lines. I'm going to copy all the lines that should be walls. All those difficult lines. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to just copy it off the side of the map over here for the moment. Just pop it there. Excellent. Then we'll go back and we'll re-multi-poly that entire area. Do it. I'm going to delete this part of those walls, and I'm going to replace them just with 2 simple wall pieces there and there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this function here, change properties. I'm going to select all of those pieces of my original outline. I'm going to right click, do it. And then I'm going to say change the layer to walls, and I'm going to change the sheet to walls. I'm going to make it, I like big, thick walls, so I'm going to change my line width to 1, and I'm going to change my fill style to something stonework, cobble, bitmap, that one. And then when I click on OK, suddenly my walls all appear. And then what I'm going to do is move this back. So I'm using the move tool here. Do it. I'll select that point there, and I'll move it over my dungeon map. And then if I zoom to extents, I can now see I've got my dungeon map and the walls. So far it's looking pretty plain. Let me now zip this up a bit. I'm going to use sheets and effects, so I'm going to click on this to bring up the control panel. There we go. And you can see currently I have no sheets or effects attached. I'm going to click on Activate Sheets and click on OK. Now, it hasn't done much for me. It's just put a little bit of a wall shadow on there. And the reason for that, if I right click on this again, is that I actually don't have a particularly good style sheet for this dungeon. So I'm going to scroll down through all my different sheet effects collections, and I'm going to find the DD3 one. There it is, Dungeon Borderless. And I'm going to click on OK. So now you can see it's starting to look very spectacular, much nicer. Look at that beautiful lighting. So that's looking great. We now want to start decorating this out with those lovely traps I was talking about.